Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with, look at this. It's Rudolf Serkin, the lost tapes. Well, they're not actually lost, are they? Here they are. Now, everybody knew these were around. What it contains is the Waldstein and Appassionata Sonatas by Beethoven. And Serkin, these are iconic Serkin things. Our very own Jed Disler gave his Appassionata a 10/10 on ClassicsToday.com, as well it deserved. And the Waldstein, this appeared, there was his early one, the mono one for Columbia, and then a new one appeared on the unreleased studio recordings on Sony. There was a lot of unreleased Serkin. He was a great perfectionist. He really was. And so he was very careful about what he approved for release. Actually, his unreleased Beethoven sonatas are pretty marvelous. So, sometimes people's perfectionism gets the best of them, doesn't it? And in this particular case, you're stuck with me talking about it because the liner notes are by none other than Jed Disler. And so I get to cover this all by myself. I'm so excited. So let's talk about these things now. The best performance of the pair is the Waldstein, which was done in 1986. The Appassionata was done in 1989. The Waldstein is very, very similar to Serkin's other performances of it, actually. If you look at timings, for example, from the mono era all the way through, he's very, very consistent. His technique is in really good shape for 1986. It really is. And I love the interpretation. Oh, it's just marvelous. What's really so cool about it is that is the combination of, he's not too fast. He doesn't flit through it, especially the first movement. But on the other hand, he has a pulse. He really has a pulse. The opening, you got to hear the pulse. And he's got it. He's absolutely got it. The slow movement is beautifully sung and wonderfully sort of wrapped as in R-A-P-T, not wrapped as in wrapping paper, as in W-R-A-P-T. It has that wonderful stillness, and he eases in to that allegretto rondo finale so beautifully, and he has just the perfect tempo for it. This is one of those pieces. I think it's one of the most beautiful things Beethoven ever wrote. I really do. And it just, each time the rondo theme comes back, da 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 ba, da da, with the running accompaniment, it just sounds so fulfilling. And it's just a beautiful performance. I'm not sure what it was that he objected to. He may not have objected to anything. In the booklet here, there's a letter from DG's erstwhile former, head person, Allison Ames, where she mentions that Serkin has the flu and just hadn't gotten around to approving these for release. And she's asking someone or other if they would nudge Serkin to make up his mind because they wanted a release date that April. And, so they didn't care that he was near death. They just wanted his approval to get the damn thing released. Well, anyway, it should have been released. It's a wonderful performance. But as I said, it's quite consistent with his other versions of the same work. So you're talking about minor differences. The Appassionata is another matter. It dates from 3 years later. Serkin's technique has audibly deteriorated. It's a much more labored performance than the Waldstein. There's nothing wrong with taking things slower, but that seminal Appassionata that from 1962, I think it was, that Jed praised so much and that I think is just marvelous. It's how sort of I learned the work, really, this is a couple minutes slower in the first movement, a couple minutes slower in the finale. There's nothing wrong with slow, but you don't want stressed and slow. Labored and slow. And here, I think there is something to be said for that. It's kind of amazing. He still has the dynamic range. And the climaxes are epic. The sonics are very, very good, with one exception. The exception is that this piano had some real tuning issues as well. In the lower octave, all the way to the bottom. The Appassionata is in F minor. Those low Fs, I think they are. Whatever the note is. The very end of the first movement is really out of tune. And as Beethoven really emphasizes the darkness of this piece. It ends tragically. It's in a minor key, and the lower you go, the more out of tune it sounds. There are a couple keys that are just wonky, and they really detract from your enjoyment. And that aside, the finale, which is that perpetual motion thing, it's very, very tricky. Really, really finds Serkin to be, I think, somewhat stressed. He covers it up well. In other words, there's a certain flexibility of pulse that you didn't hear before. It's more relaxed. And in a sense, actually, with a little bit more time to hear it, it sounds like a little bit more evil somehow. A little darker, a little creepier, a little spookier. But at the end of the day, it just doesn't quite come off, I think. At least compared to his earlier versions. So it's really a question of how much you're in love with Serkin if you want this, because you can't go wrong with the Waldstein at all. And the Appassionata, he did better. He really did better. And that's just the way it goes. I mean, it's marvelous that he was able to do it, and it's marvelous that he was able to sort of bring a new view of the work, given his technical shortcomings at that stage in his life back in 1989. But it's not a great Appassionata, and his earlier one was. And that's just the truth of it. So you have to make up your mind whether you want it or not. I certainly enjoyed listening to them. So keep on listening, friends. You may enjoy it as much as I did, or you may find it a little bit sad. Take care.